we have an expert coming in to talk about the situation currently on in the Middle East, especially pertaining to these Iranian strikes on Israel. Here, joining us today is PhD Marcin Styszyński, Institute of Oriental Studies, Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for being here. So, first of all, I would like to ask you to help us elaborate on the strategic objectives of both Iran and Israel in this current conflict, particularly with the recent attacks that's being launched. What are they hoping to achieve?
That's a very good question because I remember our last talk just a couple of days ago. Before the attack, we speculated about the potential attack, or if at least Iran will attack and strike Israel. So after the celebration of the end of the holy month of Ramadan, we experienced the new environment and new conditions in the Middle East. Because so far we have experienced a kind of proxy war in the Middle East, especially on the basis of proxy or allies of Iran, Iranian allies in the region. I mean, especially in Yemen, for instance, Houthi. We experienced Hezbollah in Lebanon, and etc., including Syria as well. But since yesterday, we observe a direct involvement or direct conflict between these two states. I mean, Iran and Israel. Of course, the attack is officially a response for the attack or Israeli attack against its consulate in Damascus, during which killed top leaders or top commanders of the Revolutionary Guard in Iran. But however, it's also the context of the ongoing conflict in the Gaza Strip and Israel plays also an important role in this field. So the most important outcome is that we have now this strike or this direct involvement of both sides, I mean Israel and Iran, and further consequences could be developed in the near future, especially in the context of the response of the Israeli response to the attacks.
Right. Speaking of further consequences, we do have CIA experts saying that they do expect further escalation. And in your expertise, do you also echo the sentiment?
Yes, of course. This is the question, because actually the White House yesterday just said that since yesterday we are in the unknown and bizarre destination or destiny in the Middle East. So we have completely new circumstances and conditions. Yes, because the attack, of course, it didn't achieve militarily particular or certain targets in Israel. However, one of the military bases was hit by missiles in Negev desert, and we still don't know about other damages in Israel. But now the most important is the response, because that's why Washington tries to de-escalate the tensions between the two sides. But we should expect any responses or direct responses from Israel. There is also a question of the reactions regarding neighboring states and other Arab states, because some of them maybe not supported, but at least put themselves far away from the conflict. But now, if Israel responds, there's also a question how they will react, including cooperation in the airspace and etc. So that's completely new conditions in the Middle East.
Right, new conditions indeed. And you also brought up a very good point with the White House response, because so far we have been seeming to get a little bit of mixed messages when it comes to the response coming from the United States. They're saying that it is a red line that they will not tolerate, but it does seem like that red line has been crossed. And now we are also looking at some message when it comes to de-escalation. Where do you think this is going? Of course, it is still a very relatively unknown territory we're wading into right now, but where do you see the Americans stand when it comes to this situation?
That's a difficult question, actually, because I think the White House tried to balance between the both sides. I mean, not the Iranian, but at least the Arab side and Israeli side. That's why Washington didn't accept officially and formally the attack against the consulate, Iranian consulate in Damascus, and that's why I try to balance to not be directly involved in the conflict. But however, we should remember that locally in the Middle East, the United States is considered as a main ally of Israel. So it's a quite difficult position for Washington, especially now. We also should remember about other sides and other actors operating and who could be involved in the conflict as well.
Right, like you mentioned, it is a very, very hard balancing act that Washington is pursuing right now. Of course, we have other international players that might be involved. So I'm wondering if you can help us understand the role of these global powers, like the United States or even Russia, play in this conflict, and how much farther will this escalate until both parties start getting dragged into this?
Yes, that's a good question. If we, of course, speculate, we still speculate, but the worst scenario we could expect is any involvement or any further cooperation between Iran and Russia. We should remember that just yesterday, President Putin just announced that he supports Iran in case of any attacks against this state. So the worst scenario is the kind of cooperation and involvement, military involvement of Iran, Russia against Israel and its allies, Western, especially the West. So we may observe kind of division between the two sides or the new spheres of influences in the Middle East and also in the context of geopolitical strategies.
Right, so now this entire region is looking like a little powder keg about to blow. So my question would be, like you mentioned, there's a pursuit of some sort of diplomatic position. Do you see a reality where that could happen? Are there any diplomatic channels that potentially could be used to de-escalate this tension?
That's also a very important question because during our last talks, we just mentioned about some negotiations in Cairo. It was diplomatic negotiations between Israel, including the United States, Hamas, and other sides, including Qatar as well. But in fact, unfortunately, those negotiations didn't achieve its goals. So we see that diplomacy it doesn't work. So of course, we must return to the negotiations anyway. But now I think the main question is the kind of response from Israel towards the attacks. So I don't know if diplomacy is still on the table now. I think that, as we said, we have this direct involvement of the conflicted sides. So the proxy war is ended, and now we have both the two sides of the two opponents. I think also it's very important, as I mentioned, the role of the other Arab states or the Arab states, neighboring states of Iran. So how they will behave in the context of any escalation of the conflict.
Right. So like you mentioned, unfortunately, it does seem like the diplomatic solution is increasingly dwindling as we speak. So unfortunately, we do have to also look at the downside, maybe less positive side of things, and look at the potential for escalation. Now, I'm wondering if you can help us understand if there's any red lines or triggers that could escalate this into a full-scale war.
That's also an important question. A couple before our talk, we just see on the screen the military potential of Iran and other sides. So we should remember that Iran supports Russian regime against Ukraine by missiles and drones. So so this country has a great potential now. Comparing to the past, especially in the field of in the frame of drones and other equipments, including missile systems. So of course Israel is supported, can rely on U.S. support and Western support. We can see. So anyway, we have two great potentials between the two countries, military potential especially.
Right. So yeah, situation does look very dire. And of course, the past few times you were here with us, you made some very, very good predictions. So I'm hoping to pick your brains on some of this going down the line. And according on the current trajectory, what are your predictions for the next few months going forward when it comes to this conflict?
That's of course hard to predict the reactions and worldwide reactions, but if the role of Washington could help in this field, especially in the de-escalation of the conflict. But we should also remember that although Washington tried to put pressure on Tel Aviv regarding some actions or military actions against its opponents, Tel Aviv reacted alone and didn't take into consideration that much Washington's recommendations. So I think the Middle East will react individually in the region. My main concern is reactions of other neighboring states. Why I'm saying this? Because just to remember yesterday's attack, many targets or many missiles were hit or shot down by military forces, for instance, from Jordan. So that's why they didn't enter Israeli space. So that's why I'm talking about the reactions of the Arab states. It's not only Jordan, but Egypt as well. So if we will have this big coalition between Iran and other Arab states, so it could be a high challenge for the Middle East in the near future.
Right. So there is a lot of factors going into this. And thank you so much for helping us break this down and analyze the situation. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.